Okay, this is chapter 30, part 2. We had to stop recording the first time because my lovely children started playing the trumpet in the background. All right, so we're on page 366, right? And Atticus is convinced that Jem killed Bob Ewell in self-defense, and the sheriff is trying to convince him that that's not what happened. All right. Atticus says, "See there, Heck? Thank you from the bottom of my heart, but I don't want my boy starting out with something like this over his head. The best way to clear the air is to have it all out in the open. Let the county come and bring sandwiches. I don't want him growing up with a whisper about him. I don't want anybody saying Jem Finch, his daddy paid a mint to get him out of that. The sooner we get this over with, the better." "Mr. Finch," Mr. Tate said stolidly, "Bob Ewell fell on his knife. He killed himself." Atticus walked to the corner of the porch. He looked at the wisteria vine, and in his own way I thought each was as stubborn as the other. I wondered who would give in first. Atticus's stubbornness was quiet and rarely evident, but in some ways he was as set as the Cunninghams. Mr. Tate's was unschooled and blunt, but it was equal to my father's. "Heck," Atticus's back was turned, "if this thing's hushed up, it'll be a simple denial to Jem of the way that I've tried to raise him. Sometimes I think I'm a total failure as a parent, but I'm all they've got. Before Jem looks at anyone else, he looks at me, and I've tried to live so that I can look squarely back at him. If I've connived at something like this, well, frankly, I couldn't meet his eye, and the day I can't do that, I'll know that I've lost him. I don't want to lose him and Scout, because they're all I've got." "Mr. Finch," Mr. Tate was still planted to the floorboards, "Bob Ewell fell on his knife. I can prove it." Atticus wheeled around, his hands dug into his pocket. "Heck, can't you even try to see it my way? You've got children of your own. But I'm older than you, and when mine are grown, I'll be an old man if I'm still around. But right now, if they don't trust me, they won't trust anybody. Jem and Scout know what happened. If they hear of me saying downtown something different happened, well, heck, I won't have them anymore. I can't live one way in town and another way in my home." So Atticus is concerned that if Jem really did kill Bob Ewell, and the sheriff is covering this up, that his kids won't ever believe anything he says anymore because he's going along with a lie, right? And we all know that Atticus is a good person, and even when things are hard, he still always does what's right. So he thinks if Jem really did this, he needs to face the music for it. But the sheriff is trying, not so well, to convince him that that's not what happened. Mr. Tate rocked on his heels and said patiently, "He flung Jem down. He stumbled over a root under that tree. And look, I can show you." Mr. Tate reached in his side pocket and withdrew a long switchblade knife. And as he did so, Dr. Reynolds came to the door. "The sun was deceased under that tree, Doctor, just inside the schoolyard. You got a flashlight? Here, you better have this one." "No, I can ease around and turn my car lights on," said Dr. Reynolds, but he took Mr. Tate's flashlight. "Is Jem all right? He won't wake, Jem's all right. He won't wake up tonight." "I hope so don't worry." "Hey, is that the knife that killed him, Heck?" No, sir, that one's still in him. It looked like a kitchen knife from the handle. Kid ought to be there with the hearse by now. Good night, Doctor." Mr. Tate flicked open the knife. "It was like this," he said, and he held the knife and pretended to stumble. As he leaned forward, his left arm went down in front of him. "You see there? He stabbed himself through that soft stuff between his ribs. His whole weight drove it in." Mr. Tate closed the knife and jammed it back into his pocket. "Scout is 8 years old," he said. "She was too scared to know exactly what went on." "You'd be surprised," Atticus said grimly. "I'm not saying that she made it up. I'm saying she was too scared to know exactly what happened. It was mighty dark out there, black as ink, and it'd take somebody mighty used to the dark to make a competent witness." "I won't have it," Atticus said softly. "God damn it! I'm not thinking of Jem!" Mr. Tate's boots hit the floorboard so hard the lights in Miss Lottie's bedroom went on. Miss Stephanie Crawford's lights went on. Atticus and Mr. Tate looked across the street and then at each other, and they waited. When Mr. Tate spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "Mr. Finch, I hate to fight with you when you're like this. You've been under a strain tonight no man should ever have to go through. Why you ain't in bed from it, I don't know. But I do know that for once you haven't been able to put 2 and 2 together. And we've got to settle this tonight, because tomorrow it'll be too late. Bob Ewell's got a kitchen knife in his craw. Mr. Tate added that Atticus wasn't going to stand there and maintain that any boy Jem's size with a busted arm had fight enough left in him to tackle and kill a grown man in the pitch dark. Heck, said Atticus abruptly, that was a switchblade that you were waving. Where'd you get it? Took it off of a drunk man, Mr. Tate answered coolly. I was trying to remember. Mr. Ewell was on me, then he went down. Jem must have gotten up. At least, that's what I thought. Heck, I said I took it off of a drunk man downtown tonight. Ewell probably found that kitchen knife in the dump somewhere, honed it down, and bided his time. Just bided his time. Atticus made his way to the swing and sat down. His hands dangled limply between his knees. He was looking at the floor. He'd moved with the same slowness that night in front of the jail when I thought it took him forever to fold that newspaper and toss it in the chair. Mr. Tate clumped softly around the porch. It ain't your decision, Mr. Finch. It's all mine. It's my decision and my responsibility, and for once, if you don't see it my way, there's not much you can do about it. If you want to try, I'll call you a liar to your face. Your boy never stabbed Bob Ewell, he said slowly. Didn't come near a mile of it, and now you know it. All he wanted to do was get him and his sister safely home. Mr. Tate stopped pacing. He stopped in front of Atticus, and his back was to us. I'm not a very good man, sir, but I'm the sheriff of Macomb County. I've lived in this town all my life, and I'm going on 43 years old. Know everything that's happened here since before I was born. There's a black boy dead for no reason, and the man responsible for it's dead. Let the dead bury the dead this time, Mr. Finch. Let the dead bury the dead. Mr. Tate went to the swing and picked up his hat. It was lying beside Atticus. Mr. Tate pushed back his hair and put his hat on. I never heard it tell that it's against the law for a citizen to do his utmost to prevent a crime from being committed, which is exactly what he did. But maybe you'll say it's my duty to tell the whole town about it and not to hush it up. You know what would happen then? All of the ladies in Macomb, including my wife, would be knocking on his door, bringing him angel food cakes. And to my way of thinking, Mr. Finch, taking the one man who's done you and this town a great service and dragging him with his shy ways into the limelight, well, to me, that's a sin. It's a sin, and I'm not about to have it on my head. If it was any other man, it'd be different, but not this man, Mr. Finch. Mr. Tate was trying to dig a hole in the floor with his toe of his boot. He pulled his nose and massaged his left arm. I may not be much, Mr. Finch, but I'm still sheriff of Macomb County, and Bob Ewell fell on his knife. Good night, sir. Mr. Tate stamped off the porch and strode across the front yard. His car door slammed and he drove away. Atticus sat looking at the floor for a long time, and finally he raised his head. Scout, Mr. Ewell fell on his knife. Can you possibly understand? Atticus looked like he needed cheering up, and I ran to him and hugged him and kissed him with all of my might. Yes, sir, I understand, I reassured him. Mr. Tate was right. Atticus disengaged himself and looked at me. What do you mean? Well, it'd be sort of like shooting a mockingbird, wouldn't it? Atticus put his face in my hair and rubbed it. When he got up and walked across the porch into the shadows, his youthful step had returned. Before he went inside the house, he stopped in front of Boo Radley. Thank you for my children, Arthur, he said. Okay, so this is kind of important. I'm going to stand up to do this demonstration. All right, so basically, the sheriff is trying to say that Bob Ewell fell on his own knife. And Atticus is not getting it. He still thinks that it's Jem. And finally, he screams at him. He's like, God damn it, I'm not thinking about Jem, right? Because he's really thinking about Boo, right? And the knife thing is where we find out what really happened, okay? He uses a switchblade that he says he took off of a drunk guy earlier in the night, right? The switchblade is Bob Ewell's knife that he used to try to kill Scout, right? That's what made the mark in the ham costume. Because if you hear something and you need to like fight for something, you don't have a gun handy in your house, you're going to grab the first available weapon, which is probably going to be what kind of knife? A kitchen knife, right? So the kitchen knife that's stuck in Bob Ewell is the knife that Boo Radley came out of the house with, right? So when Heck Tate found that body, he did take that knife off of a drunk guy, but he took it from Bob Ewell, right? His dead body, right? So that there would only be one knife involved. So that he could go along with the story that Bob killed himself. Because if he's not trying to cover for Jem, he's trying to cover for Boo. Boo is really the one that killed Bob. Jem never woke up after his arm got broke. He was laying on the ground the whole time. Okay? So he says that he's covering for Boo because, what, Michael?
10:30.
It's still going?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so he says that he's covering for Boo because he doesn't want to bring any attention to him. This guy did him a favor, and if he brings attention to him, even though it is a self-defense, he's trying to save the kids, it's still going to be like torturing Boo Radley. And when Atticus at the end asks Scout if she can understand that, she says, yeah, it would be like killing a mockingbird with it. So now we have the second example of the title, right? So not only is Tom Robinson a symbolic mockingbird, so is Boo Radley. And our two storylines have finally come together. Our Boo Radley storyline and our trial storyline have come together when Boo Radley saves the kids from Bob Ewell. Okay, we're going to end this one and we're going to do one more for the very last chapter.